Somewhere in your favorite animated movie is a mistake you've never noticed. A spoon that vanishes midair, hair that passes through a shoulder like a ghost. A boy who disappears during the most famous scene in Pixar history. Studios spent years making these films perfect, hired thousands of artists, reviewed millions of frames, and still missed the errors hiding in plain sight. Today, we expose the funniest animation mistakes that made it to theaters. How errors slip through. Making an animated film works like an assembly line. One team designs the characters, another builds them, another makes them move, another adds lights and shadows, and another stitches it all into one final picture. A 90-minute film plays at 24 frames per second, which works out to 129,600 frames in total. But in traditional 2D animation, like The Lion King or Cinderella, animators work on what is called twos. That means one drawing covers 2 frames of screen time, so the actual number of unique drawings is closer to 64,800. Each one of those drawings passes through multiple people across multiple departments. Miss a detail on a single drawing, and that mistake plays on screen twice before anyone can catch it. Then there is pressure. Release dates are locked years in advance. Story changes late in production, force teams to scramble. And continuity. Making sure every detail matches across every shot is always the first thing to break. The more technically ambitious the film, the worse it gets. When your team is obsessing over individual fur strands or photorealistic water, a misplaced sock or a wrong instrument in the background simply does not register. The small stuff hides behind the impressive stuff. Every single time. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937. Here is the thing about animation errors. They did not start with Pixar. They did not start with computers. They were there on the very first day. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out in 1937. It was the world's first full-length animated feature film. Walt Disney was told it would never work. People in Hollywood called it Disney's folly. It made over $8 million in its original release, at a time when a movie ticket cost a quarter. It saved the entire studio. And it had mistakes in it. The Evil Queen is one of the most iconic villains in Disney history. Her crown is tall, dramatic, and instantly recognizable, but watch it carefully across different scenes. The number of points on the crown changes. The way it sits against her hood shifts. The shape at the base is not consistent from one shot to the next. Different animators drew her in different sequences, each working from their own interpretation of the design. Nobody had a locked, shared reference sheet that everyone followed without exception. Then there is Dopey. In the dining scene where the dwarfs sit down to eat soup, Dopey picks up his spoon and moves it toward his mouth. The spoon disappears, mid-motion. It is simply gone before it reaches his face. No cut, no camera change. The spoon vanishes in the same continuous action. This is one of the most famous single-frame errors in animation history. Not because it is complicated, because it is so simple. A spoon, moving through the air, and then not there. The reason it happened is the same reason every error in this documentary happened. A large team of animators, under enormous pressure, each drawing their own portion of the film. Someone drew the spoon in the first position, someone else drew the next position without it. Nobody caught it in review. Animation errors are not a modern problem. They are not a technology problem. They were sewn into this art form from the very first frame ever drawn. Cinderella, 1950. Disney was obsessed with getting Cinderella right. The studio filmed every scene in live action first, with real actors on a bare soundstage, before a single frame was drawn. Walt Disney himself insisted on it. They could not afford to make mistakes in the animation, so they planned everything in advance to make sure the final drawings would be perfect. They were almost perfect. The error is hiding at the very end of the film, in the happiest moment of the whole story. Cinderella and the prince have just been married. She descends the staircase in a long-sleeved wedding gown. You can see the sleeves clearly, fitted and elegant, running all the way down her arms. Then the scene cuts to Cinderella, waving from the window of her carriage. The sleeves are gone. The same dress, seconds later in the same sequence, now has short sleeves. 2 different silhouettes on the same outfit, in the same scene, on the most important day of the main character's life. What happened is a classic continuity breakdown. Different animators worked on the staircase shot and the carriage shot without cross-checking their character reference sheets. The dress was drawn differently each time. Nobody caught it before the film was locked. For a studio that filmed live-action reference footage specifically to prevent animation mistakes, finding one this visible in the final scene of the movie is almost poetic. The Lion King, 1994. The Lion King made over $760 million. It won 2 Academy Awards. It is still considered one of the greatest animated films ever made. It is also one of the most error-filled Disney films of that era, and the animators know it. Disney had 2 big films in production at the same time in the early 1990s, The Lion King and Pocahontas. Most animators believed Pocahontas was going to be the bigger, more important film. So the best talent at the studio gravitated toward that project. The team left working on The Lion King has since joked openly, in interviews and documentaries, about being called the B Team. The errors they left behind are visible throughout the whole film. In 2D animation, the final clean lines you see on screen are drawn by a separate team called the cleanup crew. Their job is to trace over the rough animation and lock in every detail. On The Lion King, the cleanup crew simply lost count of the whiskers. In one shot, a lion has 4, in the next shot, 2. Then 5. It changes constantly with no pattern. Nala's eye color shifts between scenes too. Blue in some shots, a different shade in others. Different artists, working on different sequences, use different color references. Then there is the moment Simba scratches a hyena across the face. The claw marks are clearly visible. Cut to the next shot. Seconds later, same scene. The hyena's face is perfectly clean. A completely fresh face, as if the scratch never happened. These are not background mistakes. They are errors on the main characters, in the most important scenes of the film. The movie moves so fast and the music is so powerful that most audiences never stop to look. Toy Story, 1995. In 1995, Pixar made history. Toy Story was the first fully computer-animated feature film ever released. It rewrote what animation could be. And it still had mistakes. During the scene where Sid burns Woody with a magnifying glass, there is an electrical outlet on the wall below the window. Sid raises the window shade. The outlet disappears. In the very next shot, it is back. The two shots are seconds apart. Then there is Andy's globe on the bedroom shelf. Toy Story is set in 1995, but the globe shows the Soviet Union as a country. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, 4 years before the film takes place. East and West Germany had already reunited in 1990. Some fans defend this, calling it a realistic detail. The kind of outdated globe a typical family would have sitting on a shelf and never replaced. Others call it a straightforward error. Either way, it is a world that no longer existed when the movie hit theaters. You decide what to make of it. The more clear-cut error involves Buzz Lightyear and a TV screen. In one specific frame, Buzz's reflection in the television does not match his actual position or movement. His physical body and the reflection are doing two different things at the same time. It is a rendering mistake where two versions of the same character were never synced before the film went to print. Toy Story 2, 1999. 4 years later, Pixar returned with Toy Story 2. Bigger story, more characters, and a layering error that somehow made it all the way to theaters. A new Buzz Lightyear enters the film, wearing a special utility belt. The belt is important to the plot. The toys follow this Buzz through an air vent system, and the belt is visible the whole time. Until it is not. In the middle of that sequence, the belt vanishes for several frames, then reappears. What happened is a technical issue called a visibility or layering error. In a 3D render pipeline, every object in a scene is assigned to a layer. That belt was simply toggled off in the render queue for that specific shot, and nobody caught it in the review process before the film was locked. Woody's boot also shows his name written backwards in one shot, mirrored when it should not be. And in a quieter scene, Rex and Ham sit watching television when the screen goes dark. The camera cuts to their point of view, showing the TV reflection. You can see the furniture, the walls, the room. But Rex and Ham, sitting directly in front of the screen, cast no reflection at all. Two main characters, completely invisible in the glass. Monsters Incorporated 2001. Monsters Incorporated holds a place in animation history for one specific technical achievement, Sully's fur. The character is covered in 2.3 million individual hairs. Each one casts its own shadow. Rendering a single frame of Sully took the studio's computers anywhere from 12 to 29 hours, depending on the complexity of the shot. 29 hours for one frame. So it is almost poetic that the movie's most famous mistake involves a sock. In the 2319 scene, a monster named George Sanderson walks out of a child's bedroom with a small white sock stuck to his shoulder. The CDA, the Child Detection Agency, rushes in, pins George to the ground, and removes it. Watch the sock. When it first appears, the toe points in one direction. When George is pinned down seconds later, the sock is flipped. The toe is now pointing the other way. Nobody touched it. Nobody moved it. It turned itself around between shots. Even with a render farm running thousands of computers around the clock, even with some frames taking over a full day to produce, a sock on a shoulder changed direction and shipped to every theater in the world. Shrek 2001. Shrek was DreamWorks' answer to Pixar. It made over $480 million, won the first ever Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, and launched one of the most successful animated franchises in history. It also has a door that cannot make up its mind. Shrek's front door swings outward in some scenes. In others, the same door, on the same house, swings inward. It even slams against the door frame when it closes, which means it cannot physically be a two-way door. In 3D modeling, this kind of mistake happens when the pivot point of a door object gets moved incorrectly, or when an animation gets mirrored without flipping the hinge logic along with it. The result is a door that looks right in one shot and completely wrong in the next. The house is entirely fictional. The animators built it from nothing. They could have designed that door to work any way they wanted. And they still got it wrong. Lilo and Stitch, 2002. Lilo and Stitch opens with a hula dance class. In the corner of the room, two musicians sit playing shakers, small handheld percussion instruments. You can see them clearly in the shot. Lilo starts talking about Pudge, the fish. The camera cuts away, then it cuts back. One of the musicians is now holding a drum. No explanation, no transition. A completely different instrument appeared between cuts. What happened is simple. The animators who drew those two shots worked independently and referenced different background character sheets. Nobody compared their drawings before the scenes were composited together. This is how background character errors almost always happen. Every animator on a film is focused on the main characters. Lilo matters, Stitch matters. The two musicians in the corner of the room do not. Nobody goes back to double-check the details on a character the audience is not supposed to be watching. It is a small error in a small corner of the frame, but now that you know it is there, try watching that scene without looking for it. Up 2009. Up won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. It is the film that made an entire generation of adults cry in the first 10 minutes. Pixar called it one of their most emotionally ambitious projects. It also has a boy who disappears from the face of the earth and then reappears without explanation. Early in the film, Carl tricks a young wilderness explorer named Russell into searching for an imaginary creature called a snipe under his porch. Russell crawls under there and stays. Then Carl releases thousands of helium balloons and lifts his entire house into the sky. The camera shows the house from every angle during liftoff. The front porch, the back porch, the underside of the house. Russell is not there, not even a hint of him. The space under the porch is completely empty. Then, Carl is airborne. He hears a knock at the door. Russell is standing on the porch, soaking wet from a rainstorm, telling Carl he was under there the whole time. But the camera already showed us he was not. This is a story continuity error that made it through every review and screening before release. The setup requires Russell to be under the porch. The liftoff sequence forgot to put him there. Nobody caught the contradiction before the film went out. Frozen, 2013. Frozen made over $1.2 billion and won 2 Academy Awards. Let It Go became one of the most played songs in the world. It also has one of the most technically embarrassing errors in recent Disney history, hiding right in the middle of that iconic song. As Elsa sings Let It Go and builds her ice castle, she reaches up and pulls her braid forward over her shoulder. Watch the hair as it moves. It does not fall in front of the shoulder, it passes through it. The braid clips directly through Elsa's solid body like a ghost walking through a wall. In 3D animation, this is called a collision detection failure. The software is supposed to recognize when two solid objects, in this case hair and a shoulder, occupy the same space and stop them from passing through each other. In this shot, that system failed completely. The hair and the shoulder ignored each other entirely. This error made it into the theatrical release. It made it into the 4K remaster. Millions of people watched it on the biggest screens available, and it stayed invisible because the song, the visuals, and the moment are so overwhelming that the eye never questions the physics. Then streaming arrived, people paused, people zoomed in, and there it was. The fan community. These errors did not stay hidden for long. Websites like MovieMistakes.com have cataloged thousands of animation mistakes submitted by fans who spotted them at home. YouTube channels built entirely around animation errors have racked up millions of views. Reddit communities spend hours watching films one frame at a time. And here's what is interesting. The fans are not angry. Most of them love it. Studios have responded quietly. Some of these mistakes have been edited out of later releases. Errors in The Lion King were corrected in certain home editions. Disney has used the move to Disney Plus and Blu-ray as an opportunity to fix things that slipped through in theaters. So if you want to see the original mistakes, dig out the old VHS tape or the original DVD. Some of those versions show things the streaming edition no longer does. Conclusion. Every film in this documentary made hundreds of millions of dollars. Every one of them won awards or broke records. Every one of them is loved by people around the world. And every one of them has a mistake hiding inside it. When you think about what it takes to make one of these movies, the years, the teams, the millions of frames, the enormous pressure, the real surprise is not that errors slip through. The real surprise is how few of them do. A misplaced sock, a changing door, hair passing through a shoulder, a boy who vanishes at liftoff. These tiny mistakes are proof of how much human effort goes into every single frame. Real people, working real hours, trying to build something that feels like magic. They almost always pull it off. And next time you spot one, do not be too hard on them. It took 1,000 of the most talented artists alive to make that movie. It only took one person with a pause button to find the crack.